Hello and welcome to part 5 of the Scrappy handbag crochet along. It's going to be our last 4 stitches before we add our fabric for the lining, border, and assemble. So super exciting. Here's a closer look at the stitches we're going to do. So we have the puff stitch, the floret stitch, just a third back loop, half double crochet, and then the star stitch in purple. So let's get right into it. So let's get started. So today we are going to be doing the puff stitch, the floret stitch, a row of half double crochets, and then the star stitch. So we're going to get started first with the puff stitch to add a little extra texture. So you're going to tie into the first stitch of your row, pull through a loop, and we're going to chain 4, which is going to serve as a double crochet and a chain 2, and then we're going to skip a stitch into our puff stitch. So yarn over, insert hook, pull loop through, and make sure to pull it to the height of that initial chain, and then yarn over, insert hook, pull loop through again, making sure to pull to the height, yarn over, pull, insert hook, pull loop through, and we're going to do that a total of at least 5 times. So depending on your yarn, I'm using a weight 2 yarn, so I'm going to do a couple extra yarn overs, insert hook, pull loop through, just to make my puff a little puffier. But if you're using a weight 3 or 4, you might be okay with just the 5 yarn overs, insert hook, pull loop through. But you're going to finish by pulling through all the loops on your hook and chaining 2, and then we're going to repeat. So yarn over, we're going to skip a stitch, insert hook, pull loop through, pull it up to height, yarn over, insert hook, pull loop through to height, and repeat it. Again, I am doing a couple more than 5. I believe I'm doing 8 because my yarn is a little bit thinner in weight, but you can do as many as you would like to achieve your ideal puff for this situation. After you get your ideal puff, you will pull loop through all of them and then chain 2. So this again is the puff stitch. I have finished 2 puffs. What we're doing is we're skipping a stitch between each puff and chaining 2 between each puff. So here's what 2 look like. So you'll repeat across, skipping a stitch between each puff and chaining 2 between each puff. So this is what it's going to look like when you finish. And then to finish the row, just giving you a little close up. To finish the row after you chain 2, I have 2 stitches left. So in the last stitch, I am just going to do a double crochet. And there we go. We are finished. And Lila's coming in and trying to help with me. Next stitch is going to be our floret stitch. So that's our second stitch, but it's going to be 2 different rows. The first row is just double crochets, and then the second row is a variation with double crochets and slip stitches to create some texture. So you're just going to tie into the 3rd chain of the initial chain 4 you did for your puff stitch row. And you're going to insert your hook and pull loop through and chain 2 to serve as a double crochet. So 1, 2, and then into that initial chain 2 space, we're going to do a double crochet, and then into the stitch on top of the puff, do a double crochet, and into the chain 2 space between the puff stitches, we're going to do a double crochet, and that's what we're going to repeat across. So double crochet on top of the puff stitch, and then double crochet between the puff stitches. And we're going to repeat that all the way across for this first row to kind of create a foundation for us to do the floret on top. So it should look like kind of like pairs of 2 double crochets across. And I will show you how to finish the end of the row. So I had my top puff stitch, chain 2 puff stitch, and then I did a double crochet into the final double crochet of the previous row. And then we're going to rotate our project, and this is going to be the floret part. So we're going to chain 1, And then into the next stitch, so not the first stitch of the row, the second stitch of the row, we are going to do a double crochet. And then into the next stitch, we are going to do a slip stitch. Losing some of my yarn. And that's what we're going to repeat across. It's just double crochet, slip stitch, double crochet, slip stitch all the way across. So I'm going to do a couple of these and then show you how it creates the texture on the front. Again, Lila's trying to play toys with me right now. So double crochet, slip stitch, and you can see on the finished side, which is the front here, it creates kind of like a 3D little pop out texture because that double crochet pops out a little bit because the slip stitch is such a short stitch. Again, that's what we're going to repeat across. So double crochet, slip stitch all the way across to finish our floret stitch. So double crochet, slip stitch. So repeat that all the way across and I'll meet you at the end. So we just did our final slip stitch, and into that last stitch of the row, I am going to do a double crochet, and then into that initial chain 2 space, the second chain of it, I'm going to do a slip stitch to finish the row. There we go. So that is our floret stitch. And I'm going to flip it over here so you can see it with the texture, because this is the front of our project. You can see it kind of bobbles out. It looks like little kind of broccoli stalks almost. I think that's why they call it the floret stitch. So that's stitch number 2 for today. Stitch number 3 is pretty simple. We are just going to be doing half double crochets in the back loop. So you're just going to tie into the back loop of that initial chain you did. So that chain 1 you did for the second row of the floret, you're going to tie into the back loop, and then chain 1, 2 to serve as a half double crochet, and then into the back loop of the double crochets and the slip stitches, you are going to be doing a half double crochet. And all that's going to do is help keep that texture of that second row of the floret stitch popping out for your bag. So again, back loop only, half double crochets across. And again, this is kind of using it similar to other rows of half double crochets we've done in this bag. It's kind of flattening out the texture from the floret stitch before we do our last stitch for the project. So again, back loop only, half double crochets is what we're doing all the way across. So I'm just going to speed through a couple more stitches here. And again, this is what you're going to repeat all the way across for this row, and I will meet you at the end. So something I wanted to point out here with this shot, you can see my project is kind of slanting in with the tension, so I am stretching it out. I am going to end up blocking this before we do our final steps, but we do want to make sure again that the ends are pretty square. So I'm just doing my last back loop only, half double crochet. And then that's the end of our third row for today. So I'm just cutting and securing my end. And then we will move on to our fourth stitch for today and our final stitch for the bag, which is our star stitch. So we are going to tie into that second chain of the initial chain 2 from the previous row. So that's what you see me doing here. Insert hook, pull loop through, and we're going to start by chaining 1,
2, 3. So you're going to start by chaining 3. And then you're going to insert your hook into the back loop of the second chain, pull loop through, insert your hook into the back loop of the first chain, pull loop through, insert your hook into the next stitch of the row, pull loop through, insert your hook into the next stitch, pull loop through, and then yarn over and pull through all those loops on your hook and chain 1. And that's our initial star. And then we're going to go into the back loop of that chain 1, pull loop through, insert into both the legs of that last loop you see here, pull loop through, insert hook into the same stitch of the last, pull through, and then into the next 2 stitches as well. So you should end with 6 loops on your hook before your final pull through, and then chain 1. And that's what we're going to repeat all the way across to create our star stitch. So I will walk you through it one more time. So insert into the back bump of that chain 1, insert through both legs of the last pull through, pull loop through, insert your hook into the same stitch of the last pull through, pull loop through, and then pull loop through the next 2. And you will have 6 loops on your hook, and you'll yarn over and pull through all those loops and chain 1 to finish. And it's creating this pretty little star. And that's what we're going to repeat all the way across. So one more time for you, the back loop, the 2 legs, the same stitch, and the next 2 stitches for a total of 6 loops on your hook, and yarn over and pull through all 6 and chain 1. And again, this is our final stitch of the row. So the bag, we are going to repeat this all the way across, and I will meet you at the end just to go over the last star with you. So we have, it looks like 2 stitches left. So insert hook into the back loop, insert into the legs, insert into the same stitch, insert into the next stitch, and insert into that initial chain, or that last half double crochet, and then we are pulling through all of our loops and chaining 1 to finish. And then I am because I'm 1 stitch short, gonna do a half double crochet to finish the row just to make sure it stays squared off and I'm not dropping a stitch. And then I'm just weaving and securing my ends, and that is the last stitch of the Scrappy handbag crochet along. So this is going to be our kind of panel that we're working with. Yours might be different sizes depending on how many rows you did for certain stitches. Again, I am going to be folding mine into kind of thirds. So that's going to create the pocket of my handbag. And then I'm going to have a flap that goes over it. And obviously we still need to add our fabric and do our border. But here's just kind of a rough what it's going to look like for me with the flap. But let's just unfold it. And again, the important thing here that's going to make your bag look nice and finished and clean is that we want to make sure this is a good rectangle with nice square edges. So you may need to block it.
So you have finished all your stitches. Super exciting. So next part, we are going to be adding our lining and then doing the border and assembling our bag how we would like to assemble it. So again, I'm planning on this time doing a flap over mine. You can just simply fold yours in half if you'd like. You can fold it in half this way depending on like the dimensions of yours, but we are going to be assembling in the next video. So to prepare, decide what color you want to do your border in and pick out a fabric to line your rectangle with. But I will see you next week and we will assemble our bag. Yay!